Great, I'm going to start. I think if you could put the spotlight on me for a moment. Great. People are coming in quickly now. I'm going to start, and hopefully the spotlight will move to me so that you can see me. But alternatively, if you move to speaker view, then you'll be able to see all those who are speaking at the moment. Certainly my screen is slightly on something else there. Good, everyone can see me, that's fine. Right, welcome to the first of 3 Hustings evenings that we are holding. This is a collaboration between the European Movement Merseyside Worldwide Wednesday and Liverpool Parish Church. The European Movement and Worldwide Wednesday work together, and it is separate, but the Worldwide Wednesday structure works as the main European Movement Merseyside outreach exercise, and it creates with a monthly Worldwide Wednesday, the monthly Liverpool-based networking event with an internationalist outlook, and there are speakers, and it's based a little bit on the TED Talk style. Do get involved if you wish. Look up the YouTube account for Worldwide Wednesday. European Movement Merseyside, the title speaks for itself, and Liverpool Parish Church is the oldest surviving institution in the city of Liverpool. We've been here since the 13th century, just opposite the Library building, overseeing the events of the city, welcoming visitors from overseas. And it's a great pleasure to invite you here this evening for the Hustings. There is, of course, a disadvantage with Hustings which take place online. So thank you for your participation and your forbearance in a format which is not one which any of us would have chosen, but one which suits the times. At the moment on the call, there are 131 people. That's growing. We wouldn't be able to gather that number of people in person for this event. So it's good to be here, but I know as well there'll be slightly less interaction, less debate in the way that there would be when we've hosted Hustings in our building before. So apologies for that, but thank you for being here and for being part of it. I want to get going quite quickly because we said this an hour. I bet it'll end up being an hour and 5 minutes, hour and 10 minutes. We want to get going quickly. And I'm going to start by asking each of the candidates to give us a 4-minute pitch, campaign speech for themselves. We're going to work through this initial one in alphabetical order by surname. I say that now so that you've then got 90 seconds to work out where you fall in that list. So yes, Joanne, you'll be on first. But you're going to have 4 minutes. Now, because it is a tight time, that means that after 3.5 minutes, I am going to give you a 30-second warning, and we will draw to a close after 4 minutes. And then we're going to move into some questions, and I'll say about the format of the questions afterwards. And then at the very end of it all, there'll be a minute each for you to say a final word and round off. So I'd like to move straight into our candidates. Now, our candidates who are here this evening, I will just run through them by name, and hopefully I won't miss any out. If so, please just shout. But in alphabetical order, Joanne Anderson for Labour, Roger Bannister for the Trade Union and Socialist Coalition. We issued an invitation to Katie Burgess, the Conservative candidate, who won't be here this evening and had to decline our invitation, but she's aware of the event. Tom Crone from the Green Party, Richard Kemp from the Liberal Democrats, Steve Radford from the Liberal Party, and Stephen Yip, the independent candidate. So those are our candidates. There are 6 of us, 6 of them here this evening, and I'm going to hand over straight away to Joanne Anderson, and you've got 4 minutes from now, more or less.
Thank you, Crispin. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming along to the first of our hustings for this mayoral candidacy. I just wanted to talk a little bit about myself first. Growing up in Liverpool, I'm 50 years old. I was a teenager in the 80s in Thatcher's managed decline, and I literally felt there was no opportunities for me. And I don't want that from anyone, for any young people in our city. And that's why I've stood forward for the role. I've been committed and campaigned for social justice my whole career. I've been political since I was in my early 20s, part of the trade union movement, represent people from all across the country. I've only been a councillor for 2 years, but I've been political my whole life, and I would hardly describe myself as a politician. In terms of my background and experience for why I think I'll be a great candidate for the Liverpool Mayor, I'm a business consultant, I'm an equality and diversity and inclusion expert, and I'm also a social entrepreneur. And what that means is I've worked in a variety of organisations. I've got a lot of professional experience that can help with what we need right now. So one of my roles in the past was working for the Crown Prosecution Service, instilling public confidence into communities by increasing and opening, making the Crown Prosecution Service more open and transparent, being held up to public scrutiny. And absolutely what we need just after the Canon report. I've worked with the social economy, I've worked in supporting organisations, I've worked in supporting individuals, I've worked across sectors and across the country, internationally. I've got a wealth of experience that I think is really important coming forward for the mayoral role. I've been commissioned lots of times to help public sector organisations understand the needs of communities and co-design and translate policy. And in designing my manifesto, that's the approach I took. So over 200 people had a chance to contribute to my manifesto. And it wasn't because I didn't know where to start or I don't have a vision, but it's about bringing people along. And I'm really proud of the manifesto that's been published today. And in that, we identify 7 key areas that I want to take forward. But in all those key areas, I've done something which is called a triple lock, which shows you how, from all the decisions that we will take, we will ensure that the environment and the social impact and equality and diversity and inclusion is paramount to all our decision making. And so each area of action shows how we will impact on the environment and our social outcomes and includes everybody. So I want us to be an aspirational city. Our educational achievement rates just aren't good enough for a city like ours, and we need to do our utmost to not only raise aspirations but also marry the skills of our people to the jobs that are needed and jobs for the future. I want to empower communities to be part of our decision-making process. I think communities are best placed to address the needs within their own community, and I think history has shown in Liverpool the danger of not involving communities in decisions that affect them, so that it will be also paramount in moving forward. I want everyone to feel valued and respected, particularly our care sector. I want us to be a living wage city, and I remember campaigning for that back in the 80s, for campaigning for the minimum wage, how people said it couldn't be done and how it would affect businesses, and actually
30 seconds left.
It never held quite true. So obviously the main issue that we need to tackle is the governance and ensure that we're open to public scrutiny and our decision-making processes are not just improved, but I would like to achieve excellence. I would want us to have the best governance structures in the country, and that's why I want to stand for Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent timing. That's a very good start. Thank you very much. We're going to move on very quickly now to Roger Bannister for the Trade Union and Socialist Coalition. Roger, I can't see you on there you are. I've seen you on the screen. Go for it. I'll give you a reminder after 3.5 minutes.
Firstly, I'd like to thank the organisers for the opportunity to speak to you all tonight. And given the current difficult circumstances in the tradition of these events, I'd also like, if it's possible, to extend a virtual handshake to my opposing candidates. The municipal elections this year take place at an unprecedented time, a crucial time, following a decade of austerity measures imposed by a big business-backed Tory government, plus all the problems created by the COVID crisis. During that crisis, billionaires' wealth in the UK has risen by 35%. Proving the adage that it's okay for some. Others have lost 20% of the pay through being furloughed, and the job slaughter has only just begun. Meanwhile, our City Council has passed on the austerity cuts virtually without protest and certainly without action to oppose them. Cuts upon cuts in vital services for children, people with disabilities, the elderly and other vulnerable groups. I want to call a halt to this and to reverse it, using council reserves to produce a balanced budget in order to buy time to build a campaign amongst trade unions and the working class people of Liverpool to fight for more resources from the Tory government for our city. The current crisis in the Labour Party in Liverpool, so deep and so farcical that it has attracted national media attention, shows that that party is incapable of a Starmer's Blairite national leadership of the Labour Party didn't even allow the party in Liverpool to freely choose their candidate for this contest. But you don't deal with this mess by having a Tory government send unelected commissioners to take over important functions of the council. A Tory government, by the way, that has seen lucrative contracts handed over in pubs, and with a former Prime Minister lobbying on behalf of his big business mates so that they can get a cut of the COVID bonanza, all ultimately paid for by the taxpayer. The people of Liverpool watch this pantomime aghast and wonder where they fit in, wonder who will listen to and who will act upon their concerns. Concerns like the one-stop shop, a popular means of cutting through the bureaucracy of local government to deliver a service to ordinary people in their dealings with the council. Now, only 2 of them are to be open. The remaining 2 are to be non-static, moving from place to place, day to day. In fact, the only one-stop shops that will stop more than once. I'm proud to have joined the weekly protests throughout the city in protest in defence of that service. The link between COVID and poor housing conditions is well known, which is one reason why I wish to see affordable council houses built, and as with all other developments, on brownfield sites in order to protect our green spaces. If I was elected mayor as a socialist, I would be a socialist mayor, implementing socialist policies and lending the support and assistance of the mayoralty to working people fighting to defend their jobs and their living standards. During the last mayoral election, I publicly supported the RNT campaign to keep the guards on the train, standing with them on their picket lines, a campaign that was ultimately successful despite the opposition of the mayor of the city to it, despite the opposition of Joe Anderson. My background for many years has been a trade union background. I've been branch secretary of the Knowsley branch of Unison for over 40 years and served on the National Executive Council of that trade union. And I believe that little is gained in this world without a fight. If I was elected, I would fight alongside and on behalf of the working people of this city to improve their lot. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Another one spot on. The first 2 candidates have led the timekeeping is perfect. So
a name like mine, you know what to do with 4 minutes.
Tom Crone now. Over to Tom. I'm looking for you on my screen, but you'll be there. Do start.
Yes, hello everybody. Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks to everybody for being here tonight. I'll just start by saying I think these elections on May the 6th are going to be the most unpredictable and interesting elections I've ever seen in my political life. And that's because Liverpool really stands at an important crossroads right now. That is chiefly because Labour have failed the city. We've had 11 years of Labour's mismanagement and failure, and that has left us with the commissioners breathing down our necks and looking over our shoulders for at least 3 years. The recent government inspection and the report that generated was a moment of real shame for the city and very embarrassing for us. And the people of Liverpool are quite rightly outraged about it. According to the Echo, 69% of voters will change how they vote at this election. People want a fresh start. Now, in the past, when people have wanted change in Liverpool, voters have turned to the Lib Dems, but the Lib Dems have also cost this city a fortune. In 2008, when they were running the city, Liverpool was declared the worst performing local authority in the entire council. And then in 2010, they went into coalition government with the Conservatives and begun the disastrous process of austerity and cutting the council budget. So voters in Liverpool will quite rightly be hesitant to hand the reins back to the Liberal Democrats. So it's easy for me to criticise the other parties, but what is the positive case for voting Green in this election? Well, firstly, the Greens have been steadily growing their vote share in Liverpool and also growing in their influence within the city. So just on vote share in 2016, when I last stood for city mayor, I got 10% of the vote. And in the last local elections, we got over 13%. And with the growing urgency of the climate emergency and the prominence that's gaining in people's minds, that growth is just going to accelerate. And with the field as wide open as it is now, who knows what could happen. In terms of influence, in 2019, we pushed the council to declare a climate emergency, and the city did pledge to get to net zero by 2030. And also last year, when the first lockdown cleared the streets of traffic, we launched a successful campaign for pop-up cycle lanes, which led to the former mayor announcing that he would create a vast network of cycle lanes. Yet the reality has fallen far short of this rhetoric. From now on, actions must match words. Future generations, your children and mine, must have a city and a planet that survives and thrives. And the future of the city is in all of our hands. We must elect new, clean, green councillors and a new mayor committed to clean, green politics. So I believe that I have the vision and the experience to lead the city and deliver that clean government and that positive change. I will fight inequality in this city. I will push for a basic income trial in Liverpool. My plans to insulate thousands of homes in the city will make them warmer whilst cutting people's fuel bills. More green spaces, accessible walking and cycling routes, and a green jobs transition fund will get the city working, moving and recovering from the pandemic.
Just 30
so if
seconds.
You think green, 30 seconds, perfect. If you think green, then please vote green. Use your votes wisely. You get a first and second choice in the mayoral election. So make me, Tom Crone, your first preference and use your second vote however you choose. The only wasted vote in this election is a vote for the failed parties of the past. A vote for me is a vote for hope and positive change.
Thank you very much, Tom. I'm going to move straight on. You're all doing extremely well on timekeeping, so thank you for that. Go across to Richard Kemp now from the Liberal Democrats. Richard, over to you.
Thank you, Crispin, and for all those who are regular participants in this, my computer is just playing funny. We normally end up Worldwide Wednesday with a beer, so I can assure you I got a cold one in the refrigerator. So where are we? We've got to start with a very clear understanding of where Liverpool is at the moment. And the incredible thing is that this report, which came out on the 24th of March, made it absolutely clear that Liverpool is the worst council in England. No other council has ever had 16 people arrested for 15 different sets of offences. No other council has lost £100 million. No other council is going to have to spend between £250 million and £500 million on putting right some of the major problems which have been caused by the fractional investment process in Liverpool. And in Liverpool, we should never forget that between £500 million and £1 billion has been lost to private investors who tried to invest in us. So we've got specific problems to Liverpool, but we've got two other problems as well. We've got real problems, as some of us predicted, with the aftermath of leaving Europe, where we know there are major problems for our exporters and certain types of importers, and there will be huge changes in our working patterns. And on top of that, there is the real effect on our city of the coronavirus pandemic. Some of the changes will be good ones. I welcome the fact that more people will be working from home and not having to commute and pollute the air by doing so. But there will be many jobs lost, many different types of job will need to be created. And we need to think very carefully about what our city will look like. Now, we've brought all that together into a manifesto. And you can see that at www.liverlibdems.org.uk. And we will combine not platitudes, not pious hopes, those two P's must go, but principles, policies, people and processes. Because we've got to have principles, because clearly they've been missing. We need the right policies to deal with the three sets of problems I've already mentioned and more. We need the right people, because clearly the right people haven't been making the decisions. And we need processes, because quite clearly Liverpool has been a corrupt council. So what can we do about things like that? Well, as I said, a lot of it is in our manifesto, but I can do some things in the first 10 minutes of being elected as a mayor. I will change the title used to become an elected leader, like all the other leaders of the other councils in the area. I will halve the salary, because I think it's an obscene level of payment at the moment. I will reduce the number of cabinet members to make sure they're focused on the key priorities. I will change the scrutiny process, because clearly it hasn't worked. I will cut the mayoral leads who've been getting money for doing nothing. And that's the governance, that's the structure of the council. And we will then need to put into place a whole series of policies, and particularly those that relate to the environment, where we have to create new policies for transport. We've got to get people and support people to walk, to cycle, then to use public transport, and only then to use the car. And what a mess we're making of our city centre at the moment, with two things that the Liberal Democrats opposed: the Lime Street redevelopment and the mess that's being made on the Strand. We need to consider what our city centre is going to be looking like now, when there are less people working there and probably less people visiting there, because we're all used now, aren't we? Or I'm not personally, but to seeing white van man delivering our goods into our home. So
Richard, I'm going to dive in now and draw it to a close.
Sorry, I missed the 30 seconds.
Oh, sorry about that.
My apologies for that. I will draw to a close now by saying we need real change, and I've got the experience to deliver it.
Thank you very much, Richard. Let's move on straight away now to Steve Radford. Now, I think Steve might be joining us by telephone. Steve, are you there?
Hi, Crispin. Can you pick me up okay?
We can hear you all right. So it's over to you, and those watching on the screen, just imagine. Do start.
Well, I want to make it quite clear that actually I believe in making a success of the role of city mayor. I don't believe in going through the process of saying vote for me because I want to get rid of the job. I want to make a success of it. And to use that very clerical phrase, biblical phrase, by their actions thou shalt know them. Over the last 10 years, I and the Liberal Party group are the only people who have squared off party political differences, worked with the ruling administration, whoever that may be, Lib Dem initially and then later a Labour administration, on a budget working party to help us deal with the financial downturn the city's had. And it's all very well good people turning up at this hustings and say, oh, we should all work together. Where have they been in the last decade? My group has done that, and we've produced what I call constructive opposition throughout the council. Secondly, let me also be quite candid. We've heard about political corruption. Well, I've been a councillor now for 40 years, and I've seen abuse of powers and what I would call political corruption from both Liberal Democrat and Labour councils alike. And most probably, one of the biggest sources of abuse of power is council officers who withhold, prevaricate and obstruct information. And the unelected officers can be a positive advantage to the city if given good direction, but can be a serious hamper on democracy. And I think I've got the experience, having been a personnel manager on an international telecoms firm for 30 years, to sort out those people who are going the extra mile to help the city and those people who are playing their own agendas. Secondly, we have a new political reality, and I'm sure the majority of your listeners will take a disagreement to me, but I'm being upfront. I see leaving the European Union as one of the greatest opportunities for the city to grow our businesses and go for export, which is part of the government's philosophy. It doesn't make it wrong. It makes an opportunity for us. We have a foothold in shipping and insurance and financial services, in medical services, medical research and public health. We need to put Liverpool on the marketplace as part of UK going global, not sitting back, moaning and bemoaning we left the European Union. There is a new political reality. We should take the opportunity of making the best of it. And for those people who still want to go on moaning about the European Union, let's be honest. If we had been stuck in the EU, we would have a vaccination success of 10% of the population, not 50% of the adult population. I have got a broad experience in the community sector, in the city council, and in the private sector. I want to contribute to this city. But one of the most important things a mayor has got to do is actually be able to work with different parties to deal with some of the issues about restoring the reputation of this council, and work with government to restore the reputation of this council. I believe I can do it. I believe I'm committed to do it. And everybody who's got any doubt, pick up the telephone, ask a resident of Tubril, does Steve Radford deliver what he says?
And just 30 seconds left.
No, that's fine. I've got a reputation for doing what's right for my community, first, second, and third. It's a reputation I want to bring to the role of city mayor.
Thank you very much indeed. And our final candidate is Stephen Yip, who is the independent. Stephen, over to you. Stephen, don't forget to unmute. I'll start your 4 minutes when you've unmuted. There we go. I'll help you along the way.
Sorry, that's me. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go for it.
Thank you. I'm standing as an independent candidate because I firmly believe that the only way out of our present crisis is for good people of this city from across the political spectrum, from the different sectors within our community, to work together. I firmly believe that the only way that we can regain our reputation as a city is if we bring transparency, accountability, and oversight back into our city council and into our city council offices. I've been speaking to a number of people because the one thing I am not a politician. This is not a job for me. I believe that our city is in need of somebody who can bring people together. I've worked for 46 years in the voluntary sector, working with children and disadvantaged families across our community through the work of kind. I've worked with a variety of different organisations and individuals. I believe that I have the skills, ability, and the humility to ask for help if needed and to seek advice. I do not have all the answers. And I think the one thing, when I've been on the knocker speaking to people throughout the city, not just in certain areas, but from north to south, is there is a wave of discontent. There is a wave of unhappiness from people who feel that this council has let them down. I'm still waiting for one councillor to stand up and publicly say to the people of Liverpool, I'm sorry, we've let you down. That hasn't happened. We have to appreciate that there are areas within our city who feel completely isolated, who feel completely alone. And that's the job of the elected mayor. We have to bring people together. More importantly, we have to listen to what these communities are saying to us. As I say, not one person has all the answers. Within our city, we have a wealth of experience, we have a wealth of skilled and talented individuals who will come together and who will give us the pathway out of this crisis. Because it is so important for the future, for our children, for our grandchildren, for their children. I want them to have a city that they are proud of. I want them to have a city that other cities look up to and say, wow, how did you do that? And we have to bring in other organisations to help. We have to bring in organisations like Transparency UK, who are leaders in anti-corruption, who can show us how we can implement procedures that will take away the need for commissioners to come into our city. We are a city that has such a wonderful history. We have a city that will have a wonderful future.
That's
if
30
we
seconds
work together. As I said before, I am an independent. I do not answer to any political party. I answer to the people of Liverpool. A vote for Stephen Yip is not a vote for me. It's a vote for the future of this great city that we all love. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We've come to the end of our candidates' sort of protected time of speaking. We're going to move to questions now. I would just like to say that although I began by saying that it's a more challenging format and not one we would have chosen, please keep comments in the chat going, because actually this makes it far more interactive than it would be if we were sitting in a building together. So keep the chat going. I'm sure lots of us are reading them at the same time, and this is a great way of participating and getting some dialogue going alongside the sort of formal proceedings. Thank you as well to all of those of you who have submitted questions. There have been an awful lot of questions that have come in. So what I've done is I've read through them all, and I've grouped them under some headings. And as we move into questions, I'm going to pick on candidates in a different order, quite a random order, to answer the questions. I'm going to ask you each candidate to take no more than 2 minutes to give an answer. What I would say is you don't have to use your full 2 minutes. So if you can say what you're going to say more quickly, please do so. You don't have to fill the time. Some of the questions, the first group is of questions which I'm going to take around reputation. So I'll name some of those who ask questions. So and I've seen some of you in the chat as well. So Brian raised the issue of trust in our elected officials. James wonders whether a fresh start will have any effect on existing elected officials. Matt asked if we need a city mayor, given we've got a Lord Mayor and a Metro Mayor, as well as the Chief Executive of the Council. So the question I'd like you to answer is this one. In the wake of the Calla report into Liverpool City Council, what actions would you take to restore local confidence in the council and improve the national reputation of the city? Let's say that again, and then I'm going to ask Roger to answer first. In the wake of the Calla report into Liverpool City Council, what actions would you take to restore local confidence in the council and improve the national reputation of the city? Roger, can I ask you to go first in no more than 2 minutes?
Yeah, I think there is another thing I'd like to look at as well as the report, which is the investigation that's going on into the retiring mayor. I think that will shed as much light on things as anything else as well. But obviously, in the light of the report, we have to accept many of the points that are made. What we don't have to accept, as I've already indicated, is that these things can be sorted out and resolved by the use of commissioners. I think we've got to restore democracy to the city. The 4 minutes we had earlier doesn't give us time to say everything that I'd like to say, but I want to make it clear now that I also do not support the continued existence of an elected mayor taking powers away from elected councillors. And I would look to varying that with a referendum of the city to put those ideas to the people. The council has to take responsibility for what it does. At the moment, we've got this odd situation where the mayor holds the purse strings, the council have limited powers to do anything about it, and the recipe for problems and corruption is there. So I think those structures, those political structures, need to be sorted out and need to be democratised so that the people of Liverpool can sort out the problems of Liverpool and not anybody else. I'd also clearly, one of the speakers made a point about the attitude and behaviour of certain officers and chief officers after a lifetime in local government, as I indicate, not in Liverpool, by the way. I fully understand that point as well. I think it was Steve Radford that made it. Chief officers are in a very powerful position in terms of the manner in which they present issues to councillors, the manner in which they can keep certain information under the counter and highlight other stuff that might be relevant. That needs sorting out as well. And I think with the background that I've got in local government, I would know where to go and how to identify those problems. Because we have to make sure we don't have an officer caste running the council, we have councillors running the council.
Thank you very much. If I can ask you to end there. Thank you. And I'm going to go straight across to Richard. Could you answer that question, Richard?
Yes, I can't answer it fully, so I'm just going to pick on one particular aspect of that. I think things will be massively improved if the whole council was far more transparent and everyone, councillors, the public, businesses in Liverpool, could actually see who was taking the decisions and where they were taking them. In political terms, we need to improve the scrutiny of the cabinet and the officers. We call the scrutiny committees select committees in Liverpool, as they're called in Parliament, because we wanted all councillors to work together to challenge those who are the key decision makers. In fact, that hasn't worked in Liverpool, with Labour councillors largely defending their own. But we've got to also have much more transparency in the way that officers work. Huge decisions have been made in the past and not report back. So I describe it in a recent blog as dealing with the boring bits, getting due processes right so everyone can see the trail of decisions, how we spend the money, where we spend the money, and who decided it.
Thank you very much. Always good to end a little in advance. So thank you very much indeed. I'm going to ask Tom now for that question around reputation and restoring it. Tom, over to you.
So first of all, the Max Caller report has been incredibly important at puncturing through a wall of silence that has been built up in Liverpool Council, which has made it incredibly difficult for members of the public and councillors alike to really get to the true answer of what's happening in the city. So that's been really helpful, and it's the analysis it goes into and details all the various malpractices that were happening in the council is going to be an incredibly useful tool going forward. And I'd like to say as well, I do think that the conclusions of the report would have been even more severe if there wasn't some evidence that things are beginning to change in the right direction. So I do think there is evidence that we can start getting things on the right track. So the two things I'd do, first of all, I would put out every stop to make sure that the improvement plan that's been demanded was implemented as quickly as possible and was as thorough as possible. And one of the most important elements of that is having a way of recording every single decision that's made in the council, which is completely transparent, every meeting, every decision, so that public and councillors and officers alike can always find out exactly how something came to pass within the council. And the second thing is that we do need a new way of doing politics in the council. Back in 2012, the Green Party were the only party that voted against bringing in the mayoral system. So we'd want to have a look at that. I really want to open up the democracy in this city, and I want to see a people-powered democracy. And one of the tools I'd make use of is the citizens' assembly process, which brings in members of the public to work with officers and with councillors to come to really well-considered, really good quality decisions. And the topic of how Liverpool should be run should certainly be the subject of one of the citizens' assemblies that I'll bring together.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I'm going to move straight on to Steve Radford now around the reputation and Liverpool. Steve, over to you. You're muted. Little tap. He's nearly there. Struggling a little bit with that. What I'm going to do is... there you are. There you are, Steve. Right, go for it, Steve.
Is that okay? Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Yeah, sorry about that. Can I say I'm really angry? I'm angry because some of the aspects of the caller report about decisions being made without ward councillors being advised, with officers withholding information, with decisions being made autocratically. They were not issues that I needed Max Caller to report to. They were issues that my group had been raising with senior officers prior to the Caller report. So I'm going to be up front. I'm actually angry that we have not been getting the service from the senior officers for some time. And we actually need someone who's actually going to go in and actually say, run this like a private business. If people aren't doing their job, withholding information, there's the door. And I did that as 30 years as a personnel manager. Going forward about democracy, and all I've talked about people's assemblies, well, I'm going to be honest. I think one of the aspects that Liverpool suffered from is the first past the post voting system. We have inflated Labour majorities sometime, and a couple of times we have some inflated Liberal Democrat majorities. We want to make the political system more plural. And I think proportional representation across the city would work. And if you doubt any doubt that it produces a better type of politics, look at the debates in the Welsh and Scots assemblies, where there is more consensus building on different issues. There's coalitions around an issue rather than party politics. So I'd be asking the government, give us PR in Liverpool. We've got to work with the commissioner. That doesn't mean we have to accept everything he has to say. We've got to be seen to be working with government to clear our act up. And I know there's some people who would find that hard to bite the bullet. But government pays the majority of the council's money. And we need to make sure they feel some confidence that we're making progress. So a couple of things there. And we need someone who's prepared to work with all parties. And the proof is in the eating.
Thank you very much.
Mine is alone the one that has done it.
Thank you very much. That's great. And just an apology to a couple of people who got their hands up. I'm afraid there isn't time to take questions from the floor like that, but keep it going in the chat. Please do participate by putting in the chat, and there's conversation and dialogue going on there. I'm going to go across to answer a question now to Stephen Yip. Stephen, across to you.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Go for it.
Transparency, accountability, oversight, all things that have been missing in our council. We need to bring in external help to ensure that we have accountability, transparency, and oversight. We should have a commission for employees of the council who, if they feel they've been asked to do something illegal or immoral, can go in complete confidentiality and report that. We need to have a standards and oversight independent committee which looks at the whole running of the council and the council officers and has the ability to ask those questions which people are asking me all the time on the doorstep: why that was done, who did it, who gets the benefit, who was on the committee. I think as well it is vitally important that councillors and council workers are properly scrutinised, that their declaration of interests are updated and are fully informative and are on the internet so that anybody can see what committees they're on, who they've been employed by. You know, some people have just put self-employed. Self-employed to do what? Some people have put private consultancy. Who are they working for? How long? How much do they get paid? Is it anybody who's got an interest in a city council contract? It is about restoring trust. We don't have to like our politicians, but we have to trust them. We have to believe that what they're doing is for the benefit of the city and not themselves. And that's what really is missing. I've spoken to people in the north, the south, the east and west of our city, and they are unhappy. There is a tsunami of people who are completely distrust our city council.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you. And finally, I think you've probably worked out, Joanne, that you're next up on this. So final answer to the question on reputation and Liverpool City Council. Joanne, across to you.
Thanks, Crispin. So good businesses have good governance. They also ensure that they have a good environmental impact and social impact. And that's who investors have been investing in, particularly during COVID. And that should be our focus. We need to ensure that we have good governance first of all and foremost. So in terms of our reputation, I think in terms of us addressing our governance issues will impact on people wanting to invest in the city, and it's already had an impact, to be fair. We've already got people who are willing to invest or willing to talk to Liverpool now because of what's happened with the Canon report. So in my manifesto, I talk about having cross-party scrutiny, which I welcome and support. I think it's the only way to have proper scrutiny at council level. But I also want to back this up with an annual citizens audit, where citizens of Liverpool get to look at our decision making, get to view how decisions are made, and get to contribute on an annual basis to our scrutiny processes. We have a programme of learning and development in place since the Canon report has come out. We're mapping what those development needs are, not just for councillors, but also within the City Council, because some of these things have happened because people aren't clear on the processes, and we need to address that foremostly. In terms of our openness and transparency, I absolutely agree with what everyone says. All decisions should be open and transparent in a public body such as the local authority, and I have experience of doing that in a national organisation of similar size. And I was, as a ward councillor, one of the first things I'd done was able to get a scrutiny panel for the Education Select Committee into terms of Muslim admissions within our city schools, because there's been an issue there and the scrutiny was necessary. So wholeheartedly support being open and transparent for scrutiny. There are already plans in place, and the Labour Party are also helping us with their investigation as well.
Thank you very much. That's a good moment to start. Well, thank you to all our candidates for answering that, and I keep saying please do keep the chat going. Our next question is, there are a number of questions around ethical issues. I'm going to name some of those issues, and then in the question itself I'd encourage candidates to refer to some of the issues that questioners have put forward. So a number of questions have been raised about the need for Liverpool to be an ethical city. Helen, Jeremy, another Helen and Colin raised the question of the AOC Europe Electronic Arms Fair booked in at the Arena in October 2021, that's this year. Sharon raised the issue of increasing the plastic recycling capacity in curbside collections. Helen asked about actions for addressing climate change. Jill asked about actions to address violence against women. Maggie asked about equality and diversity. Abby wants to know if those holding council contracts pay the real living wage. The whole selection of questions there around the ethics of our city. So the question is, noting some of those issues, and please do refer to some of them, but noting some of those issues raised in the questions, how would you ensure that an ethical agenda is both adopted and implemented within the city? I'm going to ask Tom to answer that one first. Tom.
Thank you. Hello. Yes, thanks, Crispin. That is an absolutely fantastic question. That was a long list, and I didn't actually manage to write everything down, but I'll address some of them if I possibly can. First, just to say that the Green Party is a party that is just fundamentally founded on its core principles, which is about living in harmony with the natural environment and ensuring equality, fairness and justice for everybody. It's on our website at the front of our policies. That is our absolute founding principle. looking at some of those ethical issues that were raised there, the issue of the arms fair was one that I was hoping to bring up tonight, because Green Party Councillor Lawrence Brown was absolutely instrumental in setting up the campaign group that swiftly responded last time that arms fair was set up at the convention centre, and they responded quickly, campaigned and got it cancelled. And we also pushed the former mayor to promise to create an ethical charter so that we don't encourage such things to happen in Liverpool in the future. We were promised this would happen, and as we all now know, it's been booked back in. It's an absolute outrage, and I'm going to be speaking to the chief executive about it on Thursday. Recycling, this is a very complex issue, but from my perspective, I will be looking for ways to stop plastic getting produced and brought into our city in the first place, rather than trying to recycle it, which is costly and inefficient compared to not producing it in the first place. Violence against women, yes, this is a big issue at the moment, obviously, with the recent protests. I will work across civil society, all sectors, to make our streets safe for absolutely everybody, especially women, and also that will extend to families and children by making our streets have slower speeds, safer traffic, and many other issues like that. And the living wage, that is something that I am 100% behind. The Green Party, it was one of the first things they did when they took control of Brighton and Hove Council, was to make it a living wage employer, one of the first councils in the country to do that. Thank you
very much. If I can draw you to a close there, and I'm going to go straight across on those ethical issues and refer to any that you wish, or others, to Stephen Yip. Across to you.
Thank you. I completely agree with what the previous speakers have said. We need an ethical city. I have 2 daughters and 2 granddaughters. I want Liverpool safe for them. I've also got a 17-year-old son. I want Liverpool safe for him. And I think it's so important that we work together and we bring external people in, as well as councillors and council officials. We've got to work across the city together, because there are so many skills out there. There is so much talent out there that we need to harness. And I believe that if we can do that, we will have a city not only to be proud of, but a city that other people look to for inspiration. Because we are a city that has such a proud history. And as I said before, we need a proud future. And the only way to do that is by working together. If COVID's taught us anything, it's taught us that if we can work together, we can achieve anything.
Thank you very much indeed. And I'm going to ask Joanne to answer that ethical question next. Joanne, over to you.
Holding an electronics arm fair in Liverpool is totally unacceptable. We are a socialist city. We don't agree with that. And I'll be writing to the chief executive to address that and to put forward an ethical policy for the city. In terms of violence against women and girls, the amount of women who've been murdered during lockdown is appalling. The cuts to services that have happened over the years is absolutely appalling. In Liverpool, we've changed the format from dealing with violence against women and girls to domestic abuse. And whilst we do care about men in domestic violence relationships, it takes away the whole emphasis of violence against women in society. And that's something I'll be addressing immediately. I was responsible in the CPS for ensuring that prosecutions, there was successful attrition rates around prosecutions for violence against women across the country. And I will be working with Emily Spurrell and the Metro Mayor to revisit the Violence Against Women Summit that happened a few years ago, to develop a strategy for the region and to make Liverpool a city that's safe for women. In terms of contracts with people with living wage, again, unacceptable. We have power within our pound that we spend in procurement, and we should be getting the very best in terms of social value, but also using our influence to address the living wage. And I'm committed to that, as I've said in my manifesto. I've been working for 30 years in this city to address equality, diversity and inclusion, that people have got access to jobs, employment opportunities, training and access to services. And I will be working again with the Liverpool City region to address the positive action training needs coming out of COVID recovery, to ensure that all sections of society access jobs and opportunities.
Thank you very much, Joanne. And straight across to Steve Radford now. Slight moment of trying to unmute. I'll give you just a moment more. What I'm going to do is ask. Oh no, you're there now.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, sorry about that. It's been a day. I think there's a common consensus over ethical policies, but I think what we've got to keep our focus on is actually delivering better and more adept services for our residents and opening up opportunities, not just look at the negatives. What do I mean by that? Liverpool over the years has been a landlord of mass ownership and mass neglect. We've had horrendous amounts of derelict land sites, derelict buildings at the council. We need to get the city renovated, but we also need to do more to keep our small businesses and open up employment opportunities for our own Liverpool workforce, not just depend on national companies. I think there's a real opportunity to drive forward the city by encouraging small and diverse businesses, and that will affect all the communities. We need to grow the economy, and we need to support small businesses. We need to encourage people from universities staying in the city and building up their own business network. So yes, be ethical, but also be practical. And I'm going to be actually candid. I know I'll upset a few people. We had a cycle lane imposed us on Tube Brook, which blocked all the roadways, stopped local businesses getting access to customers, and imposed because it was trendy. If we're going to have a green agenda put forward, it's got to be practical and actually involve the community effect, not just imposed on them. We've had a real kickback here in this part of the city about wonderfully nice, fashionable decisions being imposed on communities. We need to take the communities with us and actually have genuine consultations and practical policies that actually improve the benefits and opportunities of all our young people. And as we come out of COVID, I've been working with a load of my colleagues here, and we've been working on youth programs for the summer holidays to give our young people positive opportunity.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to move straight across to Roger now, Roger Bannister.
Thank you. Firstly, I'm opposed to the arms fair, and I think it's clear with that issue that the city council needs to have a clear set of ethics, a clear set of standards, which have to be adhered to by any organisation that wants to enjoy the hospitality of the city. And if they don't uphold those standards, then they don't come here with their events, with their conferences, etc. I think there's also practical things that we need to look at. For example, in relation to attacks on women, what we've done with our street lighting, whether it needs to be improved in any places. We need to listen to women and women's organisations and take a lead from them in these kind of practical measures. I'd like to look at what money's spent by the city on resources for establishments that give shelter, etc., to women who are victims of domestic violence, whether that funding has been cut, even if it's not, whether it needs to be improved so that the service can be improved. I think it's a matter of drawing up your ethics and then putting them into practice. And you draw them up by speaking to the people who are directly concerned by the problems that we are discussing in this issue.
Thank you very much. And finally across to Richard Kemp to answer that question on ethics. Richard.
Ethics is absolutely vital, particularly if we're to get out of the situation we're in, as exemplified in the Calla report. And that must start with councillors and the council. The way we often behave in the council chamber and committee is actually a disgrace to democracy and sets a bad lead to other people in the city. And I acknowledge that sometimes I've been part of that problem as well, and I think most councillors would say they have. The way we treat our staff is absolutely disgraceful. There was clear evidence in the Calla report, but I picked up in an earlier meeting, of the depths of misogyny and bullying inside Liverpool City Council. And we have to be a good employer and show other employers have to do it. We have to be ethical in who we choose to invest and invest with. For example, I don't believe that we should be supporting the expansion of the airport because of the environmental consequences that we will bring. I don't believe we should have put £1 million of investment into a luxury car company making toys for the rich. So it comes back to transparency, leading by example. We have to show that we're ethical if we're going to make our council ethical and help other people within the city to be ethical.
Thank you. Thank you, all the candidates, for that, answering that second question on ethics. So the first question, we looked at reputation, second, ethics. I'm going to move on to a final question now, and I'm actually looking at the time, going to ask candidates to try and stick to 90 seconds, which is a tall order because I want to look at money now. Now, a number of questions came in looking at finances and local issues, and I've seen some of them come up in the chat as well. So Sue, Peter and Ruth all raised the closing of one-stop shops and the impact that will have on communities. Neil drew attention to nearly £500 million worth of cuts from government funding and how services will be funded. So the question is, how should Liverpool City Council deliver services for the benefit of residents? Is the answer to cut services because of falling revenue, or to generate income? But how? How would you prioritise services, and what current services would you cut if the money isn't there? That's a long question, but you don't have to answer every aspect of it, but just address the fact that we have reduced amounts of money and we need to run council services. I'm going to ask Stephen Yip to answer that first, and as I said, if it's possible, do it in 90 seconds. Good luck with that. But Stephen.
Okay, thank you. I think, again, this is about looking at who best we can bring in to help us. There are pots of money within the council, which I've been told are being discovered all the time, 106 money, which we've not been told about. I'm not a politician, I've not been a councillor. So I would be coming in and speaking to both council officers and other experts, because I think it's important that we look at the whole of the council budget, and then by speaking with our different assemblies, I would like to set up a North, South, East and West Liverpool Assembly. We'd be looking at priorities for them. But I think it's important, it's got to be a paramount importance that we look after the most vulnerable within our community. Children, the elderly, the care sector, we have to prioritise them. And then we can look after that at how best we can increase our budget, and then we can look at other things. But I think the fact that we've lost over £100 million, £100 million has gone out of the budgets where no one seems to know. And that is the major problem that we have to face. I've said it from day one: transparency, accountability and oversight. That is the only way to move us forward.
Thank you very much. Richard Kemp, can I ask you to address that one next?
Yes, well, first of all, we've got to make the best use of the money we've got, wherever it comes from. We've lost £100 million in a whole variety of ways, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's more to be uncovered about the money that's been misspent or lost in the last decade. But what we need to do then is to use the money for what people want. Let me give you an example of that. We consulted as a council on the Strand and the Lime Street developments, which are costing us about £90 million. The people of Liverpool said we didn't want it, and we still carried on doing it, although some of us I think Lib Dems and Greens oppose both of those. So we've got to use the money on people that people want it spent on. And lastly, I'd like people to control more of the council's assets, not privatise it, not flog it off. Why aren't local people helping to run our parks, to manage them, our libraries and a whole range of other services, so that the people who use the services can also take the decisions about the services that are required?
Thank you very much. I'm going to go straight across to Roger Bannister now. Roger, over to you.
Thank you. First of all, I want to make it clear, I'm a bit worried about this. I'm not sure who these experts are that could come along and tell us what to do. My experience in local government is there aren't many of them that really know what they're talking about, but they're bloody expensive if you take them on. And I wouldn't be throwing away council taxpayers' money on experts for quite common problems within local government. I believe in, as I've made it quite clear, that local authority services should be provided in-house. I would continue to provide them in-house, and I would take back, wherever I could, services that have been privatised by previous administrations. And I've made it clear already that I oppose all cuts, and in fact I've put forward the strategy for dealing with that, which is a balanced budget in the first year using sensible reserves and mount a campaign to get the money back from the Tories. This city's done it once before. It did it in the 80s. It can do it again. You don't get anything without a fight. And either you have a fight and defend and save the city, or you end up being elected on promises and cutting and cutting and cutting, just like all the administrations have done since the 80s.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask Joanne to answer that one on finances now. Joanne, over to you.
I agree with a bit of what Roger has said. I'll be honest, I don't believe in expensive consultants coming in to address the problems that we've got. I believe we're best placed to address them. We haven't collected rent, and we're owed money that we need to get back in. So in terms of increasing income, I think that would be a strategy to use. I'm against cuts to services, and I would hope that we would do everything within our power to make sure that we generate income that will impact positively on our service, so we don't cut provision. Unlike Roger, I don't think Liverpool City Council is best at delivering everything in-house. I would absolutely look to our social economy sector. We have a thriving social economy sector in Liverpool and Merseyside, who are able to deliver services and put the profits back into those organisations and have a massive social impact and address some of the issues that we need addressing within our local communities. So I would look to the social economy sector to work together rather than private sector companies. Thanks.
Thank you. And Tom, could you take that one next? Across to Tom.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's true that money is very tight in Liverpool after Labour squandered £100 million worth of potential income, and the Liberal Democrats oversaw £300 million in budget cuts to this council. So there are a lot of challenges facing the council. I don't think Roger's solution of dipping into the reserves is going to answer all of our problems, although there may be some solution there. One area where there's a little bit more flexibility within the council is borrowing capital to invest. So that's something that I'd have to look at. And it's about priorities. This Labour administration has boasted about having £100 million worth of roadworks going on in the city, whilst many other extremely important priorities haven't been addressed. In the last budget meeting in March, the Green Party put forward a budget amendment which would have raised £25 million for investment in climate mitigation measures. So even without the support of all the officers at my disposal, I was able to show how I would create that budget for climate emergency action. But as a mayor, my priorities would be twofold. First of all, I'd focus on things that really will improve the well-being of people in Liverpool. That's things like green space, clean air that's fit to breathe, and even things like tackling litter and problem parking in the city. These are things that will make a big difference. And also creating a good environment for business and for people to want to set up their start-up businesses here in Liverpool.
Thank you very much. And finally, across to Steve on finance.
Well, I think one of the biggest assets this city council has got is actually our ordinary coal-faced frontline council workers. And unlike other people who've made lots of comments about how we're going to change and work together, I've actually sat with the Budget Working Party, and we have got some very good, responsible trade union leadership who know we can't go back to the militant days of redundancy papers being run around the city and confrontation with the government. When the government's holding the purse strings, confronting them doesn't solve anything. What we need to do is work with the business community, private business community, work with the housing associations who made a terrific contribution to improving council stock. And I think we need to actually look at more community enterprises. I personally think we can actually liberate our sports centres and other facilities and make them into community trusts where they'll be able to get quicker decision making, more investment, and be more responsive to the marketplace and what people want. We should be looking at more social enterprises where the council is playing a part supporting, not controlling everything and controlling things badly. We've actually tried to do too much. But one of the other bigger problems that's been ignored in this debate is the demographics of the city. We have a very aging population, we have an older housing stock, and we have a dramatic need to improve the quality and the extent and the geographical spread of sheltered accommodation and housing schemes to help people live a more dignified life in their homes. These are the issues that matter, and these are the issues I want to see all of us work together to improve.
Thank you very much. We're drawn to a close now. I'm going to give each candidate a minute to finish off, just as a final word from each of them. But I'd just like to remind you, obviously, my name's Crispin Pailing. I'm Rector of Liverpool, and this is a collaboration between Liverpool Parish Church, between European Movement, Merseyside, and Worldwide Wednesday. And videos from this evening's hustings will go up on the Worldwide Wednesday YouTube channel. You can get involved with that. Information is available. You'll have seen that on the internet. The next 2 Tuesdays, we've got more hustings. We've got hustings for the Police and Crime Commissioner next Tuesday at 7:30, and then the following Tuesday, so that's the 20th next week, and then on the 27th, we've got hustings for the Metro Mayor, the Combined Authority Mayor. So please do book on via Eventbrite for those. Get your questions coming in as well. I hope they'll be as lively as this evening. We're going to hear from each candidate now for a minute just to finish off, and I started working down in alphabetical order. I'm just going to work up the list now in reverse alphabetical order. 60 seconds only for a final word. Stephen, can I go across to you? Stephen Yip, independent candidate.
Thank you. I believe that politicians have let this city down. I believe the only way that we can now get out of this mess is by an independent individual who can bring people together from across the spectrum, business, unions, third sector, faith sector. We need to work together. The only people that have been affected by what's been happening owe them better. We owe them more. If elected, I would be working because I would have no political label. My loyalty is not to a party, it's to the people of Liverpool.
Thank you. Steve Radford, the Liberal Party candidate, Liberal candidate. The great theme of this evening has been Steve trying to get himself off mute. You're nearly there. But throughout, we've enjoyed the look on your face. Have you been trying to take it off mute? Well, we might end
okay.
up...
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Sorry about that. Can I say quite bluntly, a lot of people have talked about the problems of the city and actually working together. I, of all the candidates on this platform, have done that for the last 40 years. I've supported, as an opposition party, constructive budget amendments to ruling groups, whether they happen to be Lib Dem, Labour, or a coalition. We need to actually have people got some experience, because part of the problem is not just the politicians. If you're thinking that, you're missing the picture. Part of the problem is council officers drip feeding selective information to councillors. And I think I've got a proven record of challenging deception, prevarication, and obstruction. And that's what we need someone at the top to do. Not to be Mr. Nice Guy, but to be ruthless in getting the information and giving fair decision making to the city. I've done that for 40 years as a councillor, 30 years as a personnel manager, and 20 years leading a community charity.
Thank you very much. And across to Richard Kemp now for the Liberal Democrats.
There's no doubt that at the moment Liverpool City Council is perceived as a basket case. Huge problems still remain to be resolved, and some of those will take time to work through. But we can start on the 7th of May when the new mayor is declared. And if you look at my blog, you'll find that I'm going to make 11 key decisions in 10 minutes, which will either do something or start the process of making major change. Now is not the time for well-meaning amateurs. We need people in that council with experience who can actually know where the levers of power are and can use them in the right direction, so that Liverpool City Council no longer makes a laughingstock of Liverpool the city.
Thank you very much. And Tom Crone from the Green Party.
Liverpool is currently at a very important crossroads. We can turn back to the past failings of the Liberal Democrats and the Labour Party. We can turn the wrong way, and the climate emergency can become an ever more difficult and pressing problem for us to solve. A vote for me is a vote for hope and a vote for positive change. Vote Green for clean politics, action on the climate emergency, and a better, healthier city.
Thank you very much. And Roger Bannister now. Roger, it's from the Trade Union and Socialist Coalition. Roger.
Thank you. There's been a few references to the need for unity tonight, and I think it depends what sort of unity you want. There is a unity amongst most of the candidates, all of them I would say except myself, which says one way or another they will impose cuts in local services and implement austerity policies as demanded by the Tory government. I'm the only candidate that's saying that I won't do that. I'm the only candidate with alternative policies to that, which is socialist policies. I'm the only candidate with a strategy to avoid the pitfall of making cuts, a strategy of fighting. I've explained that I've had 40 years experience in local government. I've taken on chief officers in local government on behalf of my members, local government employees, and I've defeated them, and I've defeated local authorities by relying on the backing of ordinary working people. And I would approach my job as the mayor in that manner, fighting for the working people of Liverpool with their support as expressed in the ballot box.
Thank you. And finally, Joanne Anderson from the Labour Party.
As a new councillor, I'm not entrenched in the culture at all, but I bring some political experience as well as professional experience from various different sectors, public, private. I've worked in the civil service, I've worked nationally, I've worked locally. I bring a wealth of experience that is able to give the skills that are needed to transform the culture within Liverpool City Council, both from a councillor perspective and an officer perspective. My values speak for myself. I'm a values-driven leader. I am a socialist, and you will be able to see that from reading my manifesto. I will also, if elected, be the first ever female leader of Liverpool City Council, which I think represents a truly fresh start and a truly new way of doing things. So I'd like you to come with me and make history and vote for me on the 6th of May, because I believe I represent the fresh start that Liverpool needs.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank all of our candidates this evening. The full list of candidates is available online, of course, and thank you for attending. Thank you to all of you for coming along. This, as I said, has been a collaboration between European Movement Merseyside, Worldwide Wednesday and Liverpool Parish Church. Please do go to Eventbrite, book in to come to the Hustings next week for the Police and Crime Commissioner. And other than that, have a very good evening. We've done 80 minutes. It's not enough, but there are other ways of getting to know the candidates as well. Please do read the manifestos. Please do engage with other literature and come back next week to find out more. Thank you very much and good night.